Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the House of Nostalgia. Today, I am doing a feature on the late author, Mr. Donald Goines. The first time I read any books of his, it was in the early 80s. I borrowed Dope Theme from a friend who liked to read as much as I did. After I read this book, I fell in love with urban fiction and urban nonfiction. I read at least 3 of his books before I moved on to other urban authors. And I noticed that all of his book covers has been updated a few times over the years to appeal to new readers of his books. Now to me, the 70s covers seem to have that grittiness that the new covers don't have, but I guess they know what they're doing. Donald Goines was born December the 15th, 1936 in Detroit, Michigan. He was born to a middle-class family, and he was told by his mother that her family was descendants from Jefferson Davis. Now, Jefferson Davis was an American politician who served as the President of the Confederate States from 1861 to 1865 as a member of the Democratic Party. He represented Mississippi in the United States Senate and the House of Representatives before the American Civil War. So obviously his mother knew their family history, and she told her family. Donald was the middle child and the only boy. He lied about his age and joined the Air Force and fought in the Korean War. Goines had an honorable discharge in the mid-1950s and returned home with a heroin addiction. In order to support his drug habit, Goines started robbing, stealing, pimping, and moonshining. He moved around from Detroit to Kansas City, Missouri, and Junction City, Kansas, back to Detroit. He was not a stranger to prison life. He was sentenced several times in state and federal prisons. While serving time in Michigan-Jackson Penitentiary, Goines started out trying to write westerns, but quickly changed to urban fiction after reading Iceberg Slim's autobiography, Pimp: The Story of My Life. Goines was heavily influenced by his work. Now, I read that book, and that was the only book of his that I could fully read. I just couldn't get into Iceberg Slim's books. I didn't even like the movie Trick Baby, and I just watched it for the first time last year. But Goines was blessed to find his true calling through reading Iceberg Slim's book. His mother gave him a typewriter in prison, and he sent his first draft, Whoreson, to Iceberg's LA publisher, Holloway House. By 1972, he had written 2 books, Dope Theme: The Story of a Black Junkie, and Whoreson. Now let's think about this for a minute. He wrote 16 books between 1971 and 1974. He needed the money to support his drug habit. That way he would not have to commit crimes and return back to prison. At the age of 36, Goines moved to LA with a young lady named Shirley Saylor. By this time, Goines had several children by different women. Life in LA didn't fare well for the couple, and they soon returned back to Michigan. Because of the overload of books he was writing, Holloway House Chief Executive Bentley Morris requested that he start using a pseudonym to avoid having the sales of his books suffer due to releasing so many. So he started writing in the name of Al C. Clarke, which he used for his Kenyatta series. On October the 21st, 1974, Donald Goines and Shirley Saylor were found dead in their home from gunshot wounds to the chest and head. The killer was never found. I remember seeing a special on Donald Goines' life and death. I can't remember what channel this was on, maybe BET or maybe even the ID channel, but I doubt that it was the ID channel. But it was some years back. And during this special, I learned a few things that I didn't know. The first thing that surprised me was that it was children present in the home during the murders. I didn't know that. I'm really not sure if this happened in the day, evening, or late night, but I do know it could have been any time for Donald to be in front of that typewriter, and that's where he was killed. But for Shirley to be in the kitchen, I would say that it wasn't late night. Another thing is that I believe the door was locked because most homes that have anything to do with drugs, whether selling them or using them, the door is always locked due to paranoia. And unlike what we see on TV, kicking a door in mostly take more than one kick, which would give Donald and Shirley time to move around that house. So I believe that they knew the killer and they let him into the home. Another thing that surprised me was that the police received an anonymous call to the home after the murders. As we know that this was during a time before call ID. So I feel that the call was either from a person who heard the gunshots or a person who knew what was going to happen or found out what happened after the killings before the police knew. The special and internet felt that it was a drug debt or a person who Goines wrote about in his book, and he told a little bit too much truth. To me, it seemed like the special was leaning more on the book scenario. But why did they move to California? Not for a better life. Only rehab could have gave them a better life. I feel that they were trying to get away from something because he left at the age of 36 and he was killed in Michigan at the age of 37. Goines wrote about killers, pimps, prostitutes, drug addicts, and drug dealers. I really don't feel like any of them was reading his books trying to find out if he was writing about them. Now, if any of them was locked down in prison, maybe they would have had time to read the book and waited until they were released to kill them or ordered a hit on them while in prison, which is possible. People were killed for anything, that's a fact. And another fact is that a drug addict needs credit in order to support their habit. If you are a heroin addict and you don't have the money for it that day, you cannot go to sleep and say, I will try tomorrow. You would be too sick to function. You are too scared for what will happen if you don't get it. No drug addict can have enough money to pay for their habit. Another fact is that credit means interest. The addict is going to eventually slip up on those payments. There is no morals in the dope game. When the mounting debt is too high to pay, you find somebody else to get credit from. Then you dodge the old dealer that you owe, and that's dangerous. This has been going on for decades, and I don't feel like this story is any different. It's very unfortunate that he didn't get a chance to straighten out his life and enjoy the benefits of his writings. It's been over 45 years since his death, and his book has sold millions of copies. I hope that his family was able to collect his money from his books, but I'm pretty sure that that's a whole nother story. I would like to thank you all so much for watching my feature on Mr. Donald Goines.